And before we get started, I have a question for you all. How many of you have gone out to take photos of birds in flight and come home with photos that look like this? Anybody? Yeah, I know I sure have. And how many of you have maybe, when you're out in the field, you love birds, you love shooting birds in flight and being in nature, but maybe you've reacted like this.
Photography is my therapy. The calm, the peace, the quiet. It's perfect. You piece of shit.
Anybody done that at all out in the field? Yeah. A little bit of swear. So my plan here today is to have you going from something like this to having back that peace, that more fun out in nature. Yeah, that more calm. I'm going to give you lots of tips on how to shoot birds in flight, but also give you a lot more to think about before you even go out to do your birds in flight session. So I'm just going to go over what we're going to cover today. So what we're going to be learning, we're going to be going over location and behavior. We're going to talk about camera settings, and then we're going to move into common mistakes. And then we're going to be going into some bonus rapid fire tips. Those are some of my favorite. They're really quick, but they're kind of like cheating while you're out there. And then if this is super boring and you all fall asleep, you can just pay attention to the last slide, the key takeaways, because that'll be everything all summed up. And then I have a little gift for everybody that they can actually take home with them to help learn more about bird photography. And then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. Sound good? All right. Before we jump right in, though, I am just going to give a little bit about who I am. So like I said at the beginning, folks, my name is Travis Slayton. Online, I go as Trav in the Bush, and this is really cool getting to do this on Vancouver Island because I'm going to talk about things that are related to Vancouver Island, and you guys are going to actually know what I'm talking about. So I got kind of started into all this working as a multi-day hiking guide. So I did multi-day hiking and sea kayaking. 10 years ago, I started out doing that, and I was based out of Cowichan Bay. So I've done the West Coast. I did the West Coast Trail 16 times in 4 years. I've done Nootka Trail, North Coast, Cape Scott. So if at the Q&A at the very end, if anybody has any questions about any of those, I can definitely help you out with those as well. And then I did that spring, summer, fall. In the winter time, I worked as a multi-day dog sledding guide. So I did that for a little bit in the Yukon, but then I was mostly based out of Northern Ontario. And while I was doing those adventures, I brought a camera with me, and I just absolutely fell in love, a deeper love and appreciation for wildlife. And then it was a trip to Australia that just got me hooked on birds. I just became obsessed. And then I discovered in 2019, 2020 that working in the tourism industry wasn't very good for work. So when everything got all shut down, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I dove even deeper into my photography, and I got more into social media, saw that all that vertical video and everything was blowing up, and I noticed everybody was posting such great photos. And I was like, man, this is actually really hard. Everybody's posting everything that looks amazing, it's great, but I want to show how hard this is. I want to show my failures, and that clip that you saw at the beginning was one of the first videos I had ever posted, and it did really well, and I started to build a name for myself, creating this relatable content and really relating to other people and sharing with the struggles, and it snowballed from there. I started doing that 5-6 years ago, and today, fast forward, I've built an audience of over 600,000. I got Nikon contacted me 4 years ago. I built a relationship with them, and then last year I became one of their Nikon ambassadors, and that gets us to where we are today in front of you all. So that's a little bit about me. Now we'll move on to why we're here, learning about taking photos of birds in flight. We're going to start off with location and why location is so important. So how many of you have gone out to maybe a local park, got your camera in hand, you're walking through the park, and eagle, hawk, it's gone. You missed it. Anybody had that where the bird goes by? Okay, well, that's it for the day, I guess. So that's why location is so important. If you're just going out kind of willy-nilly, like, I'm going to get a portrait, maybe a bird in flight, we'll see what happens today. That's why locations are so important, because we want lots of reps when we're going out to capture birds in flight. We want to be able to have lots of reps, not that one-off shot, because we're not going to be able to up our skills, right? With that one shot, we need to have tons and tons of reps. And the way we do that is by finding locations with lots of birds. And again, really cool being able to do it here on the island. So a good place is like Esquimalt Lagoon, where we have wintering waterfowl there all the time. We have lots of birds conjugating in one spot. So it means there's lots of constant in and out. You sit there for a long enough time, you're going to get, in an hour, 20 birds going in and out constantly. So that's one good way to do it. But if you're, it's really cool that you guys are talking about this, but what if you travel and you go to a new place and you don't know what birds are there, how to find them? So are folks familiar with eBird? Do we have a lot of eBirders out there? So I've been using the app for years, but something I didn't know that you can do with eBird is if you go on the desktop version, you can search anywhere in the world. So if you're going on a trip, I heard like Paris, we heard about, a lot of people going to Europe. So if you're going somewhere, you go on eBird and you can type in the search bar any place in the world and it will show you the hot spots. But my favorite part about it is that it will actually show you the photos. Because not every good birding location is a good bird photography location, right? So if you search in, somebody gives you a list, oh, you got to go here, here, here. Put all those locations in and you can see, are people able to get at eye level? Are there lots of birds flying around? Is there a ton of them? So that's what I love eBird for. And I actually used it last year. I did a trip to Ireland and I asked a bunch of folks, where's the best place to go in Ireland to get photos of seabirds? And a lot of them, good birding spots, but the birds, they're far down on the cliffs and I'm really up high, so it's not the best for birds in flight shots. But because of that, I was able to figure out using eBird where the best shots were, and I was able to get some of my favorite shots of puffins in flight. But, like I said, we don't all have puffins in our backyards, but we'll have waterfowl. Waterfowl, really, really easy. Again, a place like a Esquimalt Lagoon, or I'm sure there's some spots in your head that you're thinking of right now, like, oh yeah, I've seen lots of birds in that one spot. I can get lots of shots going in and out, because that's more what we're looking for. Beach chickens, seagulls, another great bird to practice with. Really slow, and again, there are usually a lot of them on a beach, really easy to get shots of, or just even something simple and common like a mallard. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting those reps in for that time where you're going to have a puffin. You want to be able to get that practice, right? Be careful of cobra chickens. We don't want to get them. They're terrifying. And next we're going to move on to predictable behavior. For predictable behavior, I like to use an osprey as an example. Again, really awesome I get to do this on Vancouver Island because I can talk about where I used to shoot in Cowichan Bay. The reason I like to use an osprey as an example is because they kind of check all these boxes up here on screen, because when we're talking about predictable behavior, we want to know where do they nest. And of course, with birds or any wildlife, wherever they live, we want to be ethical. We don't want to get too close to the nest. But ospreys are great because they're normally, especially in Cowichan Bay, they're nesting way out on the poles, right? I think there's like 6 nests out there. And that's where I was able to get a lot of my osprey shots when I first started out, was because, okay, I don't know where they're hunting today, but I know they got to come back here at some point. So if I sit here and I got 6 of them, I have lots of, my odds are high. They're all out hunting right now somewhere. They're going to be returning. So if I sit here for the next hour or so, I'm going to get shots of them coming in. And that's actually how I got this one. This was at an estuary I had never been to, but I saw the nests all out. Like, okay, if I stand here for a little while, I'm sure one's going to come back. And sure enough, one came back with a fish. So they're a really great example of learning that predictable behavior. So we're asking ourselves, where does it nest? Well, it's an osprey. It's probably going to nest near the water. Why? Because, well, what does it eat? It eats fish. Most of its diet has to do with fish, so it's going to be near the water. They're not here in the winter. They're only here in the spring. So again, they're going to be nesting here in the spring, which also means they're going to be returning to a spot. And then how does it eat? Well, it has to see the fish. So the water can't be full of sediment, can't be really dark. They're probably not, I'm not going to go out on a really windy day because they need to be able to see into the water to dive down at the fish. So I know I'm using an osprey, but these are all things you can ask yourself about any type of bird. Another one, we were talking about gardens, hummingbirds. If you're there in the wintertime, you have a female Anna's hummingbird near your garden, chances are she's nesting somewhere in that vicinity because she's going to keep coming back to your garden. So you'll see her all winter long. So there you go. You have another spot where you can get birds in flight. The poop and shoot. One of my favorite tips for getting birds in flight. If you're photographing a bird and it's perched, if it poops 9 times out of 10, it's about to take off. So crank up your shutter speed, get ready to shoot because that's time to get the shot. It's a good warning. Like I said, 9 times out of 10. Now we'll move on to camera settings. So these are just basic guidelines. Obviously every species is a little different, but I find for small birds, we're thinking hummingbirds, chickadees, kinglets, anything like that, 1/3200 to 1/5000 plus if the light lets us get that fast of a shutter speed. And then for medium-sized birds, this is a common murre. And so medium-sized, but this big, think murres, razorbill, hawks, red tails, anything like that size. 1/2500 to 1/3200. And then for our big birds, I know we saw a pelican, brown pelican earlier. So pelican, this is a griffin vulture. So vultures, turkey vultures here, and bald eagles. 1/1600 to 1/2500 works perfectly fine. For those big birds, Other thing, the main thing I want you to take from this slide is I've found when I'm shooting birds in flight, a wider area of autofocus beats out single point. I would strongly, if you've been shooting birds in flight with single point autofocus, it can be very frustrating, have a little tiny dot, and you got a split second to get that tiny dot on a tiny bird on your screen. Going with something like, depends on what brands we got here, but dynamic area, small area large, small, wide area large, wide small, dynamic area, anything like that. Just I would experiment with different larger areas of autofocus. And then, I know this one's controversial. Continuous autofocus, seems obvious. Back button focus, I know everybody has a different opinion on whether they like it or not. If folks aren't familiar with back button, that's when you have your camera, right? Camera out of the box, you half press your shutter button, locks focus, full press, takes the shot. Back button focus allows you to make those two modes, focusing and taking the shot, into two separate buttons. So wherever your thumb rests naturally on your camera, you'll assign that to be your focus button. The reason you want to do that is because if you have a bird flying through an area right now, like right now if it was going to fly through all of you, there's little gaps, right? So if I was shooting and I'm firing, oh, it's going by you right now, I'm firing, I'm going to let off. But as soon as I go to let back on, it's going to refocus and it might not hit the bird anymore. Versus if I'm using my thumb, I can blast away and just keep my thumb down, blasting, 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 okay, and it's not going to refocus. So that's where some people like it, some people don't, and don't feel like I'm saying to try it, but a lot of people don't like it, and that's perfectly okay. I've found if you do it and you like it, you'll never go back. First thing when I get a new camera, I get it out of the box, I'm switching, I'm putting my back button, I'm changing that setting. So I like to bring this up. Just if your camera has bird eye tracking, if folks aren't bird photographers and they've had their camera, some folks, I've met somebody with a Nikon Z8 who didn't know that their camera had bird eye tracking. And if you're shooting different genres, so I just like to announce this, that if you have bird eye tracking on your camera, make sure it's on when you're shooting birds in flight. This video is just from a bunch of bald eagles, and I have bird eye on. I'm using wide large. I know it's a video, but I'm just using it to show like that the camera's locked on the entire time that bald eagle is going through the scene. So make sure you got bird eye tracking on. This is the main camera settings that I'm using with shooting birds in flight. Okay, this is kind of you set this, and now you're just focused on locking onto the bird because your camera's doing the rest. So what we're doing here is we're shooting in manual mode. We're doing auto ISO, and then I like to set an ISO limit. I know, again, this one's up for debate. Some people love to just, ISO, you just, let it go, doesn't matter, we got denoise. Anything over 8,000 for me is just, I don't like it. I'm just not a fan, that's just personal preference. So on most cameras, you can set an ISO limit. So I set mine to 8,000, it's just where I like it. And then I do exposure comp. I exposure compensate, usually minus 0.7 to minus 2. Because if I'm shooting with auto ISO and I don't exposure compensate, if I'm shooting a bird in flight, good example was that bald eagle. We have a bright white head, or if we're doing swans, right? You have a bright white swan, it's flying by, and it's going to ripples on the water, and now it's going to overcast sky, and now it's going to a dark background. If we don't have exposure comp on, we're blowing out the bird, highlights are gone, blowing out the sky, you're blowing out the ripples, reflection, whichever. So you exposure compensate down, shoot it a little bit darker. Yes, the background might be a little bit dark, but we can always bring that back. Lightroom, darks, we can pull that back a lot easier than blowing out highlights. You blow out highlights, you've clipped it, it's pretty much gone. So if you use exposure comp, especially with something like bald eagles, again, swans, osprey, white chest, go underneath. Now our camera's just doing the work. Our camera's doing the work. Our job is just to make sure we're getting it in focus, which is, with birds in flight, usually the hardest part. So I always use this setting when I'm shooting birds in flight because I set this, I'm good to go. And then I'm just focused on getting it in flight every time. So this is an example here with this griffon vulture. See how right now it's coming down? We have overcast sky, we got white colors on the vulture, and now it's coming down into dark background. So right now I have all those settings set, even though it's a video, same thing. Boom, and now it's dark background. You're not even noticing the change. But if I didn't have that set, that would have looked way different. The light color here on the head would be completely blown out. So common mistakes, speaking of kind of the ISO, is sometimes with birds in flight, we're nervous to shoot with a really fast shutter speed because we're worried about our ISO going way, way, way too high. Always better to have the noisy photo than the blurry one. We can fix noise, it's hard to fix blur. This shot here, this is of a Selvins albatross. Giant bird, huge bird. It falls into that camera settings of 1 over 1600 to 1 over 2500. I'm shooting 1 over 32 because I'm on a boat. I'm rocking, I'm moving, big waves. Why, if I got the light, why am I going to risk it? I'd rather come home with that nice and sharp. I can denoise it, no big deal. Versus that pintail up there, I remember it took off right in front of me. You know that great shot that you want if it's taken off right across the scene. But I was being greedy. I shot it with I shot it at 1:12:50. Wasn't enough. I should have done the 1 over 32 or even faster. So then on that same thing, don't be fearing high ISO. It's totally fine. Again, I'm fearful of anything over 8,000, but like anything 6,400, 5,000, we can fix it. It's not that big of a deal. Other common mistakes is just unrealistic expectations. First time I ever shot a puffin, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a puffin. They're half the size of this water bottle. They're this big. Yeah, no, they're this big and they fly like a hummingbird. Super fast, wings crazy. You blink, they're gone. I didn't know that first time. You see them online, it looks like everybody's getting them from right here in their face, and they look so big. No, they're this tiny. So super, super difficult. So just setting that realistic expectation when you go out to shoot birds in flight, like hummingbirds, puffins, it's hard. So don't be too hard on yourself. Bonus rapid fire tip: windy days are awesome for birds in flight. So it's even something like a Esquimalt lagoon. Go there on a windy day. It's very uncomfortable for us to be out there with blasting wind, but it's uncomfortable for them too. When they come into land, they have to hover. They have to work a lot harder. When they go to take off, they got to work a lot harder. So when they're coming in and landing, it's this, okay, now I'm down. Photo of the razorbill there, that's exactly what happened. It was flying towards me. It was coming in to land on the cliff. Big gust of wind blasted it, and it gave me a big flare, and it banked and went the other way. So windy days are awesome days to be practicing your birds in flight. This one's a little odd, but I do love it. It's with wildlife photography, or most photography in general, we often fear the harsh midday light. We don't like it, not even going out, not taking my camera. For birds in flight, it's actually pretty nice because we're able to shoot at 1 over 6,400 shutter speeds, really, really fast shutter speeds, and then have our ISO really low, 400, 500, because we have that harsh light. So something like hummingbirds in your backyard, this was at Hatley Castle in the middle of the afternoon. Really, really bright, got nice flowers around, middle of the day, but so it's nice to have that really nice to be able to use that fast shutter speed and low ISO. Something fun to do on those harsh afternoons where you still want to go out and shoot, but you're not going to get that nice golden hour glow. And then the other one is people walking and flushing birds. So I've used this to my advantage. This is a meadowlark. I was going to shoot a portrait of it. I was in an estuary, and I saw somebody walking from the other way. So I switched. Instead of shooting the portrait, I cranked up my shutter speed, and I just went off to the side and kind of hit. And I waited. The person walking by, sure enough, flushed the bird, and it flew right by me, and I got a whole series of shots of it going by. So that little bonus rapid fire tips of just paying attention to your surroundings. Are you at the beach and a bunch of dogs are going to come by? Oh, they're going to probably spook all the shore birds. Okay, I'm going to position myself a little bit better to get the shot. So folks, if this is super boring, this is the main slide that you want to get a shot of. So main key takeaways is use a fast shutter speed. When in doubt, 1 over 3,200. Use large autofocus area mode versus single point. A location with lots of opportunities equals better results. Don't be afraid of high ISO or bright sunny days, and back button focus and auto ISO are your friends. And because you made it to the end, I do have a free gift. This is a little ebook, so it's a bird photography settings cheat sheet is what I call it, but it's a whole ebook full of tips. That's just a QR code. If you folks want to download it, you can. That'll also get you on my email list. I send out tips every single Tuesday on the newsletter, so you can get all of that info. And then I'll come right back to this slide, folks, for folks that are still getting it there. And then just to let you know, so I do workshops. I have workshops in Spain, here on Vancouver Island, and Newfoundland. But the only thing that I have left for this year are 2 spots left for my seabird, for one of my seabird photography and cultural tours in Newfoundland. If somebody does, there is a single spot. If somebody does want a single spot or a double, I do have both available. And then that's it, folks. Thank you again so much for having me tonight. I've really enjoyed this, and it's been great to get to see and meet you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.